Chrome is undeniably the king of the browsers, with around 63% of the market share. Chances are many of you are probably watching this on Chrome. I'm going to show you how to elevate your web browsing experience from scrub tier to an experience worthy of a king. How are we going to do that? With some godly extensions. What makes a godly extension, you might ask? Well, number one, it has to fill a need that everyone who uses the internet has. 2, it has to do a great job filling that need. 3, it needs to be open source so that I can open it up, look, see, understand, and trust what it's doing on my computer. So let's talk about needs. First, everyone needs to start blocking ads, scripts, trackers, etc. that are being thrown at you from every site. Let's look at a particularly shitty site, which will give you an example of just how bad this can actually be. TMZ. I'm going to open the developer tools. I'll go to the network tab, and we're not even going to look at the page. We're just interested in what goes across the network right now. I'm going to refresh the page, and I want you to see just how much traffic there is. So up top, you can see over time a graphing of different requests are being made, and you can see a lot of them are coming out. And in the bottom left corner, you can see the total number of requests, the amount of data that's been transferred, the amount of resources, and the finish time it takes. And as you can see, it just keeps going and going and going. And what is all this stuff? Is this all TMZ content? Well, some of it is, but a ton of it, if I don't stop it, I won't even be able to look at it. A ton of it, I can't even tell you what it is. What is d.agkn? Here's some kind of ad service. Here's Criteo. What is that? I don't know. Kinetics. Google's ad service. Okay, at least that's something I can recognize. Partners.tremor hub. What the fuck is all this stuff? I don't want this on my computer. I don't want it running. And the final page looks fine. It's not super obnoxious in terms of the number of ads, but there are ads present. But we know that it spent all this time loading all this stuff we don't care about. So how are we going to fix this? We're going to install uBlock Origin, which is a blocker of resources that are known to be spam, ads, malware, just generally stuff we don't want ever to be running in the web page. I'm going to pin it in the top corner so that it's always present. And we can see immediately on going back to TMZ, we have a nice notification of the different blocking activities that have been occurring. That's a nice high-level summary, but let's repeat our experiment by reopening the networking tab, refreshing the page, and seeing exactly what resources are requested this time by TMZ. And we can see we more or less stop at about 200 requests, a megabyte transferred, and 19 megabytes of resources. A little bit of stuff's going, but we can more or less understand everything that's been loaded. Some YouTube stuff, Instagram. Okay, everything looks more or less legitimate and up. And it's so much less data. And the site actually looks even better. As we scroll down, we can see we no longer have any ads on the right side. We do have this one that stuck around, and I'll show you how you can fix that. But the page looks perfect. uBlock Origin generally does a great job in not breaking web pages. So let's say there are still annoying things on the page that you'd like to eliminate. You can right-click and select Block Element, and it will give you a red highlighted area that shows you what it's proposing to remove. You can preview then what the page will look like if you do that, and you can create a new rule. Let's talk briefly so you can understand a little bit about how uBlock Origin is working. If we go under Options, we can see there are filter lists, and these filter lists determine what is ultimately blocked. So we can enable or disable them. We can view what's present in the filter lists. This is malware related IPs, so we can see a list of all these different IPs that uBlock will prevent us from getting resources from. If we go back, we can see there are other ones related to ads, privacy, generic seems to be, not quite sure what that is. And we can create our own filters, which is what you just saw when I right-clicked and we eliminated that persistent ad. Now we have a new rule here. And we can trust sites if, for example, we wanted to, for whatever reason, trust TMZ, we would disable this. And when we came back here, we'd see that now TMZ is something that we trust. Anyway, overall, great extension. Definitely 100% recommend. Everyone should be using this. Second, everyone needs to start blocking ads, scripts, trackers. I know what you're thinking. Bro, didn't we just cover this in the last extension? And yes, we did. But keep in mind, online advertising is a $350 billion a year industry. There are very smart people working overtime trying to put ads in front of you, trying to track you. We're going to have to approach this from multiple angles. Remember, uBlock Origin uses a list-based approach. It's perfectly reasonable, but it's also fairly static. New tracker sites that are stood up won't be on any list, and as a result, until they're added to a list, they'll continue to be able to track us. Think of uBlock Origin as being like consulting the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. Those are good to know, but if you were trying to figure out if someone's stalking you, another approach you could take is going out in public, say to Target, looking at all the people around you, then going to Goodwill, looking at those people again, and then finally to the Home Depot. And if you see the same person repeatedly, then chances are they're following you. The tool we're going to use to achieve all these goals is Privacy Badger, which we're now installing. And it brings up a nice tour, which kind of hits on all the points that I was talking about. It's behavioral based, and it learns automatically based on what it sees. It sends a do not track signal, which is important, and we'll talk about it. Again, it's using that 3 strikes you're out policy, where if it sees something in 3 different locations, then it becomes concerned and it blocks. This is all sponsored by the EFF, which is essentially the ACLU for the internet. So there are organizations that have established this do not track flag. In my analogy, we showed the overly attached girlfriend meme appearing in different places following us. You can think of the do not track as being essentially a restraining order where we tell these people we don't want to be followed by you. And then subsequently, if we continue to be followed, then we get the cops involved, which for us means blocking the sites. I'm pinning it here, and we're going to go to CNN.com. We can see the different trackers that have been blocked. There are 3 levels: completely blocked, allowing cookies, allowing the entire domain. You can easily switch between these. You can disable for the entire site, meaning Privacy Badger will leave this entirely alone. Pretty straightforward. A few things to mention though. If you do run into sites breaking, start turning off the blockers. I would recommend having both uBlock Origin and Privacy Badger. The only reason you don't see it here, both of them for me, is I wanted it to be very obvious what each of them was doing, so I didn't want to have them both on at the same time. And in general, you'll notice that throughout this video, I may have installed extensions earlier and then later on they're not present. Some of that's because I'm filming out of order, so I just wanted to clear up any potential confusion. Next need that everyone has, you need to be able to speed up or slow down videos quickly, easily, and efficiently. To do that, we're going to install Video Speed Controller and pin it in the top right. Let's check out a movie and see what this extension gives us in terms of options. And what you're going to see is now we have this little guy in the corner, and we can see we can do plus to make it go faster, or minus to make it go slower, slowing all the way down. We can also jump forward or back 10 seconds. And you might say, well, I can just do this down here. No problem. This is easy. I can change. And you'd be right. Yeah, absolutely. This works. But you'll notice we can't go as slow as we can with Video Speed Controller. You can really, really slow it down. or you can speed it up a tremendous amount. Additionally, you can use the hotkeys, which we'll get into. Maybe I decide I want to see how this stunt was done, so I speed up a little bit, and then I slow all the way down so I can see the action I'm interested in. And I speed back to normal. Did you see how that number was changing much faster than you could go down here and make the change? The way I was doing that is, as I was talking about, the hotkeys down here. So you can decrease or increase the speed with S and D. You can set a preferred speed with G. You can reset with R. And you'll notice this is all on your left hand, which makes it really, really convenient to do the kind of quick adjustments that I was talking about. This doesn't just work for YouTube, it works for any HTML5 video, which is most video sources. Here I'm watching some fighting, and I want to see how this guy shifts his hips and throws his punch. Really easy to do. Then one final thing, since everybody's big on life hacks and all that stuff, people speak pretty slowly relative to how quickly people can comprehend and understand, especially if it's something that's just conversational, like a podcast, or if it's subject matter you already know, like you're going through a lecture and the professor is talking about things that you've done 1,000 times before. It's only when things are new to you that you really need to pay attention, listen, and go slow. So by all means, see how quickly you can speed up normal conversations and things like that. You'll probably find you can go at 2.5x speed while understanding everything they're talking about. Next need that everyone has. Have you ever felt like you're being blinded by a sea of white pixels? Well, you're not the only one. The American Academy of Ophthalmology recommends that you reduce the brightness to reduce eye strain. To do this, we're going to install Dark Reader. We can see we're going to pin it as we do with everything. And I've brought up a number of sample pages that we're going to test out. So you can immediately see this changed. Maybe I don't like this. So maybe I prefer GitHub to be as it was, light mode. Well, I can easily do that by just excluding it, by hitting that button right there. But I think I like Google this way. Ars Technica, this should be maybe a little darker, but I don't want everything to be darker. So I will do things only for Ars Technica. I'm going to change the brightness to be way low. I'm going to change the contrast to be really high. Yeah, and this is starting to look really nice. I like this. Let's take a look at TMZ. Maybe I prefer TMZ, again, the old way. I'll exclude it, no problem. Anantech, I'm thinking I want my default to be a little more brown. So I'm going to change everything that's the default to be more brown. And I think that looks good for Anantech. And now you're going to notice it's also the same more brown color in Yahoo Finance. But something like Ars Technica, where we set a special color and we set it only for Ars Technica, it remains black. So you can really change around things and tweak different websites so that they're, whatever your preference is, a great extension. We need to make sure that the websites we interact with are using encryption. Have you ever seen one of those movies where they're tracing the hacker?
30 seconds.
Stati in Russia, Germany, Paris, London, Madrid,
25 seconds.
New York, Toronto, Chicago.
A lot of things in Hollywood movies regarding computing is really kind of bullshit, but this one actually demonstrates an important point. You go through many computers before you reach your ultimate destination. If you want to see this for yourself, you can go to this handy website, Traceroute Mapper. It will give you a command to see exactly what route you would take to go to Google, and then once you get that result, so I'm going to run it here, you put that in the clipboard and you paste it into the website, and it'll show you the exact locations of each of those servers that is serving your request. So you can see I started off in Boston, I went down to New York, and then finally I went all the way across the ocean to Vienna. What we really want is we want to have a secure, almost an envelope, an impenetrable envelope that we put all our communication with our ultimate destination into, so that no one along that chain can spy on us. We're going to install HTTPS everywhere. Obviously, we don't control the destination site. They may not actually support HTTPS. It would be very rare, but they may not, or they may have misconfigured it in such a way that most of the traffic is actually unencrypted. What this extension does is it rewrites all of the requests that would have been unencrypted, and it says, hey, instead, let's do this encrypted. You can take it a step further, and you can choose to reject anything that is not encrypted. And there are reasons you might want to do that. One of them would be, remember how we have those intermediate computers in between us and them? What if somebody is trying to see our traffic and there's a process called negotiation? So we have to figure out what I can speak and what the server can speak. If someone in between me and the server says, hey, I can't do encrypted, a lot of servers will just default back to unencrypted so that you don't lose functionality. So you could get malicious people in between you and your ultimate destination saying, hey, let's drop this down so that they can read the traffic. It's also worth noting, you might say, hey, what if my bank doesn't support this, or some website that I really need to use? And I would say, one, it'd be really good to know that they don't support this very vital piece of security technology. I don't think I would continue doing business with them personally. Number two, it could, again, just be that you have a malicious person in between you and them that's preventing you from negotiating that secure connection. Really, it's unusual for any major website not to support HTTPS. And the final thing that everyone needs is the ability to change any website so it works better for you. The name of this guy is Violent Monkey. We'll add him. User scripts allow us to put any JavaScript that we want in the page, which means we can make any changes we want. This is a little more of an advanced feature, but it's so powerful that it's definitely worth talking about. There are several user script managers that are available. They're all monkey themed. There's Grease Monkey, Tamper Monkey, and Violet Monkey. This just happens to be the one that is seeing the most maintenance in terms of open source community. It's getting the most patches. So this is what I went with. Let's look at an example and I'll explain how this can be super useful. Stack Overflow is a website that programmers use to get information on different questions they have. So you ask a question like, what are generics in Java? And you pose your question here. I don't really understand the point of generics, blah, blah, blah. And then people give explanations. I like the Stack Overflow page, but I'd like to make some changes. Specifically, I'm really interested in the Q&A portion. I'm not so interested in all this sidebar and other stuff. So I'd like to get rid of this. I'm going to open Development Tools by right-clicking and selecting Inspect. And first off, I'll make the changes manually. So I want to get rid of this whole side over here. So I'll keep moving up until I've hit, this is the top level element that's this entire bar. So if you look, it's all highlighted. So I will copy the JS path, where JS means JavaScript. And don't worry if this seems complicated, it's super easy. I know I want to delete this. I can manually delete it by just pressing delete, the delete key. But I want to do it in code because we're going to write this all down in a script. So I will take that selector that I just got from copy.js path, and you can see how it's all highlighted over there. Well, I want to remove it. I want to remove what was selected. All right, cool. That got rid of that. Now I also want to get rid of this area over here. Let's go ahead and let's do the exact same thing. That looks like left sidebar is what we want to get. So we will copy the JS path. We'll go in the console. We will remove this. All right, cool. We have a lot more space. Now let's use it on our question and answer. So let's try to figure out what this guy is and what his width is defined as. We want to make it wider. So we'll take a look in here and we'll try to figure out exactly. Here we go. So this guy has a width calculation that's 100% minus 300 pixels minus 24 pixels. So I think I'd like this to be 100% at least. And that seems a lot better. We could probably even make it like 110% because there's so much space now. All right, great. Now we just need to do that in code. So again, we'll copy this JS path so we can select this guy. We'll take a look. Again, it can be a little overwhelming, but you don't have to guess about all this. You can see exactly what's available with this drop down. And this is a style that we're dealing with. And specifically, we're interested in the width. We want to set that to 100%. And let's run that command. And we can see it changed the size. All right, cool. So now we've done that. Now how do we involve Violent Monkey? Well, we click on him and we would like to add a new user script. We'll give it a name. We'll say expand our QA area. That will be the name of the script. And then we're going to bring over all the things that we figured out back in this guy. We will copy all this over, all the code that we defined earlier. We'll save. We're going to refresh this page. And we can see Violent Monkey has a 1 next to it, meaning it's applying one user script because the page that we're on matches a script we defined. If we were to turn this script off and refresh the page, then we go back to how it was before. Now I want to show you one other thing. Let's click here and let's turn on our user script. Oh, it's not there. Now, why is it not there? Well, because we have a match criteria here that says what to apply this code to. And it's very specific. It only applies to the one question that we had. But we want it to apply to all questions. How do we do that? Well, if we just add the special star character, star just means everything. Star will match everything beyond this point. So anything that is HTTPS stackoverflow.com/questions will match this. Let's save it. And let's see if that's true. I just refreshed. I'm applying this script. I'll refresh again. And now it works. So I hope you can see how you can make changes to any page to fit your specific needs. You could search, you could make the font larger, for example, on everything. You can do anything you want. You can either find other people's work, you can create your own by going through the process I was talking about, or you can look for JavaScript that fits your needs. So you could, if you wanted to learn how to, for example, increase the font, you could Google something like JavaScript increase font size. And you could learn how to do that, and you could create scripts that you would then use for that explicit purpose. Being open source is one of the 3 things that made a godly extension, and I want to talk about why. These are projects that are largely made by people like you and me who have similar problems and we're interested in solving it and sharing. That's obviously great, but what's even better, you don't have to trust. You can verify. If someone says they're doing something in an extension, you can go and read the source code. If you disagree with something they're doing or you have a different need, you can make changes as you'd like and build. That's what we're going to look at right now. I'm going to build uBlock Origin, as it was a little bit more involved to build this. I've had to switch to a Kali Linux desktop. Every extension will have different build instructions. You can find them typically just by Googling or looking at the READMEs. We'll scroll down. At the top we have the install instructions, but what we want to do is we don't want to install something that someone else built. We want to instead build this from the source ourselves. I'm going to open a terminal. And the first instruction that we have is to clone the repos. This is going to take a while. What you're going to see is I sped it up significantly. This is going 8x speed. So don't feel like your internet's terrible if it doesn't go this quickly. We have another instruction where we need to clone another repo. We're going to go into the repo we just cloned, and we're going to take a look at it with Visual Studio Code by saying code space dot, meaning open the current directory in VS Code. And we can just peruse and we can see the source code, and if we're curious about anything or want to make any changes, we can see it in here. I don't know very much about this application, and I'd have to read quite a bit to understand, and I really haven't found any deficiencies. But a simple change we can make, and we will make, is to change the icons later. The icons are just PNGs, so images that are present. We're going to continue with the build. We'll build it without making changes first. Within the dist folder, which stands for distribution, we now have a build. We need to modify Chrome to allow developer mode so that we can load unpacked extensions, which is what this build is. We just drag it in, and as we can see, it works, just as if we had installed from the Chrome Web Store. Let's do a modification now. I've found these icons, these Russian nesting dolls, and I'm interested in using these instead of the icons that are present in the default. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save several of them. So you'll notice they have underscore 16, 32, 64, 128. Those are the different dimensions. And I'm going to speed this up quite a bit because it's really boring. I'm just downloading files, renaming them, and then we're going to replace the defaults that are present. We'll go back, we'll rebuild. Now we should have a build that incorporates these new icons. And we can see it does. Hopefully it's clear. You can make any change you want. You could completely change the application. This is just a trivial change to show you changes are possible. If you made it to this point and are pinning the extensions, your browser is starting to look like a hipster's laptop. And if that isn't the pinnacle of cool, I don't know what is. That's got to be worth something to you. Maybe a comment, like, or subscription? Thanks. Have a good day.